Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was the League's Secret Weapon? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. There was no such thing as perfect, and that included me. People said I was a bit too overpowering. They said I was strong. But if there was only white in the world, it might crumble. With only darkness, there would be no light. That was why everyone and everything had a weakness, without exception. No matter how strong I was, I would always have a weakness. In my early life, I had been told I was useless, even by the top hero. I admired heroes. They were my inspiration, especially All Might. I had a room filled with his merchandise, and even now, I looked up to him. He made me realize my goal in life. You can't be a hero, that was the reality. All my childhood dreams shattered into tiny pieces. No matter how big or fearless a person was, they would always have to fight to survive. I could hear the tiny voice echoing in my head, screaming yet distant. It urged me to turn back, but it was too late. I felt my gaze fixed on the lifeless soul before me, my empty stare resting on it. It was too late. I couldn't be repaired anymore. All that was left was an empty shell. I pitied the young boy in front of me. He had so much potential, only to be crushed by my hands stained by the consequences of my choices. I could no longer turn back. This was the path I chose, the path of a villain, the path of darkness. That was awfully quick for a rookie. You're a gifted kid, said a man with a stitched-up face, my mentor and friend. He had taught me the ways of a villain and gave me strength. It's nothing, I replied silently, my eyes showing no sign of life. The world appeared dull to me, a stark contrast of evil and virtue. I have an appointment with the leader of the League of Villains. Come with me, Dobby said, and without hesitation I followed him. We arrived at a bar-like place where two men stood, one with hands over his body, the other with purple mist for a head. A girl around my age played with her dagger beside me. I began analyzing the group. It was too soon to assume their quirks, but understanding their personalities could be helpful. The girl beside me grew impatient, taking a battle stance and rushing forward, smiling widely. I want to see your blood. The man with hands held onto the blade despite his injuries, while the girl grinned, satisfied. But the blade decayed, leaving ashes on the ground. He had a destructive power, but if used correctly, it could be formidable. I asked you two here not to be killed. And I don't want the kid, I don't like him. He's been staring at me with that face, the man with hands said lazily, directing his finger toward me. Decay. What? Transform. I surprised everyone, except for Dobby, by listing their quirks without them activating. They went silent as I stared into the distance, trying to impress them. I killed 5 of them. I killed 5 kids. My face twitched, a murderous smile creeping onto my lips. Everyone hesitated to kill a child because they were vulnerable and innocent. The fact that a child had killed other children was something I felt proud of, and I was. If you're going to ask about my quirk, just know that it's something amazing. My body shook with excitement. Midoriya Izuku. The child that went missing for days. The warp man mumbled, loud enough for me to hear. I twitched again. He was dead. He no longer lived. Midoriya Izuku is dead. I smiled wider with each word, my muscles numb but my grin unwavering. Then, who might you be? The blonde girl asked, intrigued, pulling out another knife and licking her lips playfully. I stared at her, motionless. Deku. A few days ago, a child named Midoriya Izuku, age 8, disappeared. My face was scattered around the city, even heroes were involved in my case. I didn't understand their motive to find me. I could have been harmed in an alley or buried alive. No one knew, so why bother? My life was pitiful. My mother died due to complications during childbirth, which meant she died when she gave BRTH to me. My father left us the moment he heard I existed, which was before my BRTH. My best friend abandoned me because I was quirkless. Yes, I was quirkless, one of the few people in the world. I thought I could get a great quirk because of my father and achieve my dream of becoming a hero. But that dream was shattered by my great friend Kaken. The only thing that held my sanity was my idol, All Might, the #1 hero. His existence helped me gather the shattered pieces of my dreams and glue them back together. You can't be a hero, that's the reality. The pieces of my hope felt shattered again, and this time they were too small to be mended. My only pillar crumbled into dust. How could he be called the symbol of peace when he couldn't even save one child from falling into a dark path? I was slowly drowning in reality, painfully. I'd rather end my suffering than linger in pain, but then he came into my life, and everything brightened the moment we locked eyes. My mentor accepted my existence and didn't discriminate against me for being quirkless. He taught me something I'd value for the rest of my life. Deku, I replied to the blonde girl. Oh? I think I like you. Deku-kun. A hint of red appeared on her cheeks. Get your eyes checked, will ya? He clearly showed no interest, Dabi said, standing in front of the blonde as if to protect me. She sneered at him and rushed forward, gripping a dagger tightly. I swiftly took out a pocket knife and slashed horizontally, making her lose grip of her weapon. At the corner of my eye, I noticed another figure reaching for me, seemingly intent on harm. I wouldn't let that happen. I threw 2 shurikens, landing on either side of his shoulders. Though I had just started learning the basics of weapon use, I had been analyzing and predicting my opponent's movements. I always looked for openings to strike, fighting from a distance to avoid damage. That was my fighting style. I might have been flustered as Midoriya Izuku, but I was Deku now, and I intended to stay that way. Deku-kun. That was so amazing. You can use knives just like me. I like you even more now. My name is Toga Himiko, nice to meet you. She blushed and smiled wider. I turned my attention to the blue-haired boy, who was gripping his shoulder in pain. Hey, it's not nice to ambush, you know. I tilted my head, confused by his wincing. You son of a bye, he started, but the misty figure spoke up. Shigaraki Tamura, he said, putting down a glass and walking toward the boy. Yeah, Shigaraki Tamura, I mocked. He was about to charge again, but I was one step ahead. Now let's look at the situation more rationally. You're hurt, so you can't beat me because I'm awesome, therefore. I sighed, putting my knife back in my pocket. I know we didn't have the best first impression, but we can work on that later. Even though I couldn't see it, I could feel a smile on his face. He held up his hand to me. Welcome to the league, kid. I grinned sheepishly. I'm not falling for that trick, I know your quirk. I wasn't. Just kidding. I shook his hand, making sure he didn't grip too tightly. I knew he was genuine, I was just toying with him. He sighed, and I knew kids could be crazy. Not long after I joined the league, I got close with Shigaraki, whom I liked to call Muriken to annoy him. 6 months passed, and I learned techniques to use various weapons, including those heroes used. I found Eraserhead's capture weapon intriguing, though it was challenging to make it float. I also studied the heroes, looking for their weaknesses and ways to overcome. Gradually, I became bored with my life and approached Muriken. Muriken, I nudged him. Muriken. I nudged him again, smirking as he seemed annoyed. Murakian. I said cheerfully, earning a punch aimed at my gut, but I blocked it. You've been taking lessons, he muttered, and I smiled proudly at his acknowledgement. Yeah, because no one was willing to teach me, so I had to learn on my own. He sighed and looked away, pulling out some photographs from his jacket. These people have been causing trouble. I want you to eliminate them. Think of this as an opportunity to grow stronger. He handed me the photographs and the locations where they were last seen. My eyes sparkled with joy as I took them from him. I ran back to my room and packed a few more weapons with me, just in case. Deku-kun, are you gonna play today? Toga, who I had grown quite fond of, kept asking the same question for a few minutes. Toga, stop it. He needs to prepare, Dabi said, pushing her away and standing beside me. Do you need help? No fair. You just wanted Deku-kun to yourself. Toga protested, but our mother figure stepped in to break up their little quarrel. Both of you, little Deku still has a mission to complete. The argument escalated, with accusations flying around. I didn't mind being the center of attention. In fact, I was happy about it. Secretly giving a thumbs up to Dabi, he opened a warp gate. I readied myself to step through the portal. "I'll be back by dinner." I waved at my comrades as I left. A voice barely made it through the portal. I heard Muraken call out, "It's fine if you don't make it by dinner, don't be cocky just because you're strong." I chuckled at my brother. Was he seriously doubting me? I laughed at the thought. He knew what I was capable of. I could even land a hit on his sensei without using a quirk, even though he used one of those strength enhancement quirks. Beating sensei was practically impossible. He was indestructible after all. Mind you, I said I landed a hit, I didn't say I beat him. Besides, I am quite a gentleman. I wouldn't cheat my way to the top. Of course, I had my reasons for not using my own quirk. It was simply too powerful for me to control. I wasn't quirkless. I mean, that's not a lie because I really didn't have a quirk at first. But that didn't mean I couldn't be a late bloomer. I discovered my quirk at the age of 7. All Might. I wanted to defeat him, to make him regret every single lie he told. And of course, I wanted to show my beloved Kaken that I was no longer weak or worthless. I was no longer Midoriya Izuku. I was Deku. A villain. They were right. I was a monster. Having adapted to some of Dabi's fighting style, I hid in dark alleys waiting for my prey to pass by. 4 down and 1 more to go. My goal was to finish off all of them within an hour. I would praise myself since only half the time had passed and 4 had already fallen. My next target walked toward me, and I grinned at his approach. He seemed to recognize my presence and readied himself for a battle stance. I smirked, applauding this intelligent child. Wait, no, he was about my age. His dual-colored hair flowed in the wind. He actually resembled Endeavor, the flame hero, in a way. The tension between us was thick. Normally, I'd sneak out for a surprise attack, but I felt like being generous. "Oh, did you notice me?" I stepped out with a grin that people said was blinding. "I'm impressed. Would you tell me your name?" I might have sounded sarcastic, but I was hyped up, adrenaline coursing through me. The thought of the battle ahead thrilled me. When I told him my name, he shoved his hands into the pockets of his hoodie. I flinched as he stepped toward me slowly. Instinct told me to run, but my legs refused to move. I was shaking and he noticed. "Hey, do you want to know something amazing?" he asked with a smug expression, making me feel uneasy. I clenched my fists, ice trailing toward him instinctively. Who was he exactly? He wasn't a villain. Could he be? He was so young, just like me. My ice was about to hit him, but I couldn't be a hero if I killed someone, so I stopped. "You have potential. With your quirk, I bet you'll be a fantastic villain. Come join me." He held his hand out with a sadistic smile. "You do not tell me what to do," I snapped, pushing his hand away. I reached out to him, expecting him to accept. Endeavor wasn't an ideal parent. Scratch that, he couldn't even be called a parent. But instead of taking my hand, Shoto pushed it away. "Wrong move, kid." My reflexes kicked in. I shoved my hands into my pockets, twirled around, and held a knife to his throat. Who could I blame? It was only my reflex. He stood very still, fearing that if he made one wrong move, he'd lose his life. In reality, I didn't plan to kill him, it was Dabi's order. I didn't know why, nor was I interested to find out. "Oh, are you? Why are you doing this? What is your quirk?" he asked, clearly unaware that I wasn't even using mine. "That is for you to guess. I wouldn't want to spoil the fun, am I right?" He gulped down whatever he wanted to say and fell silent. "As for my name, I am Izuku. Wait, no, my villain name is Deku." I retrieved my knife and held up my hand. He seemed lost in thought, so I grabbed his hands and shook them instead. That seemed to snap him out of it, and he pulled his hands back. "You're within my age group, right? That means we're both young. You didn't have to do this," he tried to convince me, but it wasn't working. Being accepted in this society had never made me happier. "Oh, I'd like to call myself out of my age. I'm not ordinary." He stepped back and I continued, "Warp, my mission is completed. Before I go, Shoto-kun, make sure you remember me when I return, 'kay?" With that, I merged into the portal, unaware of his final reaction. Though it would probably be something like running for his parents and trying to forget everything that had happened. I chuckled at the thought. That kid was something else. Someone special. If we had not met under these circumstances, he would definitely be a great companion. Anyway, I needed to deal with Murokan now. I readied myself for the oncoming attack. Deku, his cheerful voice startled me, sending chills down my spine. He tackled me into a bear hug, and we both fell due to gravity. Gravity. He snuggled against me as I cringed at his behavior. Yes, this was my punishment, and I hated it. I was sure Murokan was genuine, but I couldn't help but recoil. Job well done, little Deku. Kurumama walked in with Himiko and Dabi. They helped me up, but Himiko nuzzled my cheek, and I grunted at the unwanted physical contact, something I despised but craved. No fair. I got him first. The blonde psycho exclaimed, taking my left arm while another teammate took my right. It annoyed me, but Dabi appeared with a small smile and a nod of acknowledgement. That was all I needed to remain calm. Now that everything has settled, dinner is ready. Misty, a nickname I secretly gave him, led us to the bar table to start dinner. We were basically a big family like normal civilians. That wasn't related. And killed together. Just for fun. Cold yet warm. Before long, 6 years had passed and I was now 14. I had gained more control over my quirk and assimilated tricks with different weapons I had learned to use. Each year, my sensei would offer to train with me for a day, but it was more of a test than training. I fought him with everything I had. After all, if I let my guard down, he wouldn't hesitate to take me out. Still, I managed to land a hit every single time. Today was one of those annual training days with my sensei, marking my growth as a villain. If there was no development and they found no use for me, I could be in trouble. But I doubted that because they cared about me. "Are you ready, Izuku?" he asked. I scowled at the name he used, though I didn't particularly mind. I still preferred being called Deku. If I wasn't ready, I'd be dead, am I right? I smirked, excitement coursing through me. He loomed over me, creating a metal arm, enhanced with muscles. It was a step up from last year. At maximum, he had only ever punched me with strength enhancement. I didn't mind the challenge, though. I had a hard time blocking his attacks. It was nearly impossible without my gear, which consisted of protective sleeves designed to soften enemy punches. We both smirked. Mine was because I knew I was about to turn the tables, while his was just random. I focused as the metal and muscled arm all for one had appeared on my own arm. Now it was just a matter of who had better stamina. I had to prove myself. I needed to win. My mind raced. I had to win. I must win. Power surged through my veins, electrifying every part of my body. I punched with all my might, landing a hit on my sensei's nose bridge, a pressure point I had learned from Southern Chinese martial arts. Sensei stumbled backward, holding his nose, and I took the opportunity to close the distance again. I charged my hand and smashed it right at him, a move I called the killer's smash. Fortunately, we were in an isolated area where no one would bother to look as a huge explosion erupted, kicking up dust everywhere. After the smoke cleared, it showed that my punch was just next to Sensei's head, just in case he couldn't dodge it since I still couldn't fully control my power. I stood up and crouched next to him as my comrades emerged from the shadows of an alley, having watched our fight. "That's amazing, Deku-kun," Himiko exclaimed as I prepared to carry her bridal style. I was already accustomed to her enthusiasm. "Did you know your eyes just went pitch black?" Even now, Dabi approached me and I shrugged, the memory of what had just happened feeling hazy. I extended my hand, recalling the fight with Sensei, and how close I had come to losing control if not for Murokan hugging me from behind. I cringed and quickly pushed Murokan away. I had enough of these affections. "You did well, Izuku. You've grown significantly stronger, and I am proud. Do you want to finally start your official villain activities?" Sensei gave me a thumbs up, and I felt a swell of pride at my progress. "Right," I shouted excitedly. Finally, I would be able to show the world what I was capable of. I would make All Might regret everything he did, everything he lied about. I just hoped the world would be ready when I came. Suddenly, memories flooded back, harsh and painful. You quirkless sheet, even useless Deku, I had expectations. Can't believe you're so dim and weak. You're nothing like your daddy, that's why he abandoned you. I jolted awake, breathing heavily. The memories I tried to forget clung to me. Deku, you alright? Muraken's voice broke through my thoughts. I recognized it immediately. Yes, I'm fine, don't worry. I breathed, sweat dripping from my forehead. Cold chills ran down my spine as the memory resurfaced. You're clearly not fine when you said that. I've known you for ages, he said, barging into my room. I was sitting on my bed, looking out the window. He understood what it meant. It was about my past. He sighed, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, but just so you know. Dinner's ready. We shared a moment of silence. He walked up to me and sat on my bed. Listen, Deku, you're making your debut tonight. I'm not pressuring you. If you don't want to do it tonight, we can postpone it. Just remember not to let your emotions get in the way of your job. He stood up and walked toward the door. Come out soon. With that, he closed the door, and I heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. I sighed deeply. He was right. What kind of villain would I be if my emotions held me back? I had made my decision to be a villain long ago. I couldn't regret it now. Emotions were a burden, but my quirk was based on emotions. I stood up, shaking off the nightmare I just had, and walked to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. What a pitiful state I was in, not very villain-like. Smile, Deku. I forced a smile, but it felt insincere. I needed to make it more believable. With a sigh, I left the bathroom and headed to the dining area, which also served as a bar. Ah, Deku, they greeted me, and I returned a small smile. I quickly finished dinner and stood in front of everyone. I'll be out tonight, I announced. They cheered me on, though Muraken gave me a distant glance. That is perfect, Izuku. I will give you a villain costume. It's simple but effective. Weapons can be hidden at every angle. It also has blast protection and fire resistance, Sensei said. With Kuramama's help, he handed me a black hoodie with green stripes, a pair of grayish shorts, a scarf to cover my mouth, and my signature red runners. If I wore this normally, people wouldn't suspect me of being a villain. It looked like everyday wear. I promptly went to my room and changed into the costume. When I came out, I found Himiko standing in front of me, observing. Deku-kun, you look so handsome. I want to marry you. Can I? Can I? Before she could finish, Dabi interrupted. Shut up, brat. Deku is gay. If anything, he wouldn't even spare you a glance. He turned away, trying to hide a laugh at the look on Himiko's face. Everyone's attention shifted to him in an instant. I could only imagine what Himiko might do to him later when I was gone. I chuckled at the thought of their playful banter. It always managed to lighten my mood. Are you ready, little Deku? Kuramama asked, now standing in front of me. I gave him a confident smile and nodded. A warp gate opened in front of me. Bye, everyone. Wish me luck. Just before I stepped through the portal, Muraken grabbed my wrist and pulled me into a hug, whispering, You'll do fine. I looked at him and nodded, and the others joined in, nearly crushing me with their affection. If it weren't for Kuramama, I don't think I could have gone out tonight. Walking through the portal, I emerged onto a street filled with innocent citizens, unaware that a threat was lurking just around the corner. I covered my face with the scarf Sensei gave me, not that I thought it could help if people didn't know of my existence. But for those who did remember, my scarf wouldn't do any good. I leapt from roof to roof, trying to find the perfect opportunity to make my debut. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a few low-life thugs attacking a girl in an alley. Narrowing my eyes, I tried not to look at them, but this could be a great start to my villain life. I sighed and looked at the low-ranked villains again before dropping to the ground. Hey, I greeted them. They stopped in their tracks and turned to me, and I saw the expression on the lady's face. It angered me. I was supposed to be the only one who brought despair to people, not a bunch of idiots. I was meant to be the one making people feel vulnerable, not these low lives. I gritted my teeth, and without a word, I lunged at my opponents. I kicked them in the gut and incapacitated them swiftly. Hearing their screams was satisfying. The sounds calmed me. The cracking noise of breaking bones was music to my ears, and suffering filled the air. They were screeching so loudly that any hero nearby would undoubtedly hear it. They were probably hiding, waiting for the perfect moment to ambush. From the corner of my eye, I saw some kind of cloth shooting towards me. It came in so quickly that I nearly lost my balance dodging. By then this hero was already too late. 2 villains were down. "Hey, Eraser," he jolted. Did he really think I would come into a fight unprepared? I was not like those loser villains who only knew how to take pleasure in their actions. I was a skilled villain who calculated instead of relying on raw power. "You're being naughty, you know that? You should play the games fairly. Why don't you come out so we can spar?" I grinned widely as he jumped down from the shadows and landed right in front of me. "I've always admired you. You were one of the very few heroes that fights quirkless. It was very inspiring," he said, glaring at me. I had to admit he was intimidating, but nothing I couldn't handle. I was used to the glares and the hatred. "Just so you know, I was saving the woman." I pointed in the direction where the lady had apparently run away. "That who ran away? I mean, she was in trouble. I'm fairly innocent, don't you think?" He still didn't say anything, so I tried to provoke him further. Your cheek is bleeding. You should know better than to jump into a fight right after you just had one." I reached for his face, and he grabbed my wrist and twisted it. Reflexes kicked in as I grabbed his arm with my other hand and pulled him down to my height, then followed with an uppercut to his jaw. I leaned in close and whispered, "Nice to meet you too, hero. My name is Deku. You're lucky I didn't kill today. I think I'm done for now." After finishing my words, I jumped backward just in case he threw any punches. I grinned. "Warp?" A purple warp gate appeared behind me as I slowly stepped back from the scene. I could see Eraser, Aizawa Shoyuda, staring at me blankly as I retreated. "See you next time, Aizawa-sensei." I poked my head out and said my last words before completely vanishing along with the portal. "Zukin." Murokin rushed at me and lunged on top of me. I awkwardly hugged him back. Hugs weren't really my thing. "Hey, Murokin, I told you I'd be fine." He pouted at me. Did I say something wrong? Besides, what was wrong with him? He was 3 years older than me. "I never doubted you, though." I reminded myself that he was older. "I saw you, kid. That was amazing." Dabi ruffled my hair, and I giggled at his compliment. The atmosphere in a villain base didn't have to be all dull. We were the exception. I felt truly happy whenever I was with this big family, and I heard this family would only expand in time. I couldn't wait. What was that? I asked Kuramama to warp me to All for One after my interactions with my friends. "What was what?" he asked in return, though I bet he knew what I meant. "The black thing." Dabi told me black electricity came out of me and my eyes were pitch black. And after reuniting with the others, I felt the urge to crush them too. I felt like I could hurt anyone from the League of Villains. "I don't want that. I care for everyone here." Before I finished my sentence, Sensei laughed, presumably at my nervousness about my uncontrollable quirk. "My boy, don't be discouraged by that. In fact, be thrilled. It shows that your quirk still has room for development and can reach greater heights than it already has. This quirk of yours is valuable, and that black thing you mentioned. You don't have the power to control it yet. But eventually, you could even take down the greatest hero, All Might. Aren't you excited? I mean, you could have hurt me with that power, and the fact that you didn't proves you have at least a bit of control over it." "Assault mode," Sensei said with a deep, cunning tone that hinted at his darker nature. "I'll keep it, thank you, Sensei. I'll do my best to develop it. I will help you achieve what you want, no matter what it takes." He laughed, and I wondered if my words amused him. Deku, he called my villain name, and I felt a surge of gratitude. It meant he acknowledged me as a true villain. "But you must never die. You have to keep living to finish what I started centuries ago. You must defeat those who inherited One for All, even if I am gone. I trust you with this mission, Deku." I felt refreshed as the mist cleared, revealing the scenery before me. His fatherly tone resonated within me. "I do anything you ask." I stood tall. My intentions of becoming a villain had never been clear. Perhaps I wanted recognition, to prove my worth, to shed the label of useless Deku, or to make Kaken regret his choices. But right now, I knew what I had to do. I would win. I'm serious. Eraser explained what had happened in the alley earlier that day. The kid utterly destroyed the two attackers but then told me he's a villain, his name. To spread the word, or something. Everyone was deep in thought. No one would believe a kid could be a villain. Then what is his villain name? Before they could continue, Midnight shushed them. Everyone, please come over here. The news. Her breath was shaky, and the heroes in the room sensed a threat. New villain in sight. Do not engage. Reports indicate an unknown hooded villain roaming the city. Please be careful going out at night. If seen, immediately contact the police. Kill rate, 10. His first appearance was last night, and he already has a high kill rate, currently classified as an A-ranked villain. Once again, contact police if you see him, and do not engage. A clip played showing a small boy emerging from the shadows, smiling at a hidden camera, raising a knife and liking the blood away. Seems like Eraser was right. A kid who has fallen into villainy. Snipe commented on the report. Well, in that case, we just have to stop him. Get out of my way, I'm heading out now. Endeavor said, rushing out of the room. You couldn't really blame him, it was in his nature. I wonder who influenced the kid to do such a thing. Nizu pondered, but other heroes began to speculate as well. I am here, entering the room like a normal person. All Might announced, and everyone wore shocked expressions. His smile faded when his associates explained the situation. He was not pleased. He knew All for One was behind it, but he didn't realize he had also played a part in making Deku's life difficult. We have to bring this child back. We cannot let him continue down this path. We can still save him. It's not too late, All Might said, pacing the room, visibly upset. Everyone nodded and began formulating a plan to save this boy. However, despite their efforts, none of the heroes managed to catch him. Deku had been evading them at every turn. No matter how fast the heroes were, they were never a match for him. He would simply duck through a portal and disappear as if he had never been there. Once, he intentionally provoked the heroes by entering their base, creating a scene. He used Endeavor's fire to illuminate the place and Power Loader's iron claws to wreak havoc. A year passed, and the heroes had essentially given up on saving him months ago, believing he had killed too many to turn back. They began to see him as a true villain. During that year, no matter how hard Deku tried, he couldn't MSTR his assault mode. The thought of harming those he cared for frightened him. Dabi, promise me you will bring me back if I go too far. I desperately tried to control this quirk, but it felt too powerful for me to handle. The power of a joker. A voice echoed in my mind, bringing back unwanted memories. I had been trying so hard to forget my past. Don't worry, kid, you're in good hands. Are you just about to call me Handsy again? Muraken appeared out of nowhere, ranting about how annoying it was to be called Handsy. I shook my head and laughed a little at their childishness, despite their age. They looked at me with small smiles, which confused me. Why are you smiling? It's creeping me out. I exclaimed dramatically, and their smiles faded almost instantly. I thought they were about to turn on me, but instead, they maintained faint smiles. It's been a while since we saw you smile, Deku. Please don't get worked up over your training. You're already strong as you are, Muraken said, patting my shoulder, while Dabi ruffled my hair. I sighed in relief. You guys really? All right, I'm heading out tonight to have some fun. A smile crept onto my face. The kind of smile that you should beware of. Do not engage. After a long night of fun, I decided to turn in. Earlier tonight on my patrol, I overheard people talking about the UA enrollment for this year. I mean, I don't have anything to do tomorrow, so I should go. Besides, I might be seeing them as well. I can't wait. As soon as I woke up, I jumped out of bed and immediately asked Kuramama to warp me to an alleyway near UA. Everyone was asking me why the rush, but I think they hit their head or something. I mean, they knew I was rushing, so why ask me something that would stop me in my tracks? Anyways, I sat on a tree near UA, using an old-school microscope to spy. Just as I calculated, he was here, but still no sight of my other target? Oh wait, silly me, his father was the number 2 hero. He could just skip the entrance exam, how foolish of me. As he walked through the entrance, he might or might not have felt me watching as he turned his head directly in my direction. Then he just continued his walk like nothing was wrong. Oh, how foolish he is. About an hour later, here comes the fun part. I sneaked over to the edge of ground beta, attempting to watch both at the same time. Present Mike started the fight without a countdown. Despite his looks and personality, he's actually quite rational. I'd need to beware of him if I ever battle him. Enough about the pros, I was intrigued by the potential each student has. One that locked my focus was Bakugo Katsuki, or Kaken. He improved his quirk drastically. If my weaker self from the old days had faced him, I would have been defeated instantly. I could only imagine the intensity of our encounters. The first half of the exam was quite boring. People just ran around hitting robots. But the second half, where the zero-pointer came out, was more interesting. It was a shame no one decided to help the poor student in trouble. I guess it might be fun watching chaos unfold, but not like UA would let it happen. On the other side, Kaken decided to take down the zero-pointer, not to rescue, but to gain attention. So here you go, the hero of the year. Please give him a round of applause. And there goes the buzzer, signifying the exam was over. Of course, the pros recognized me and immediately leapt away to an alley, getting warped away. Even though the students didn't particularly shine in the exam, they'd grow stronger, and I could tell that one day we would meet on the battlefields. And that, one day, would catch them when they least expected it. A few days after I went to UA, I was called for a meeting early in the morning. Apparently, All Might was going to be a teacher there. I received a mission from Murakun to infiltrate UA and gather some information. Though they weren't specific about what kind of information I should get, I had a pretty good impression of what it might be. Currently, I was walking out of the warp Kurogiri made and stood in front of the gate to UA with my signature gear, just a hoodie made with special materials. I had heard the staff members were having a faculty consultation today, which I found odd. Murakun just had to send me today of all days. Breaking into UA wouldn't be hard, we had access to their security. Though it wouldn't be a problem without that access, I could simply scale the wall and land on the other side without getting caught by the security cameras or the other hidden sensors. Why not just warp into the school? That's irrational. I was only taking precautions in case Kuramama sent me to the wrong coordinate. Besides, breaking into a high-security school would be fun, wouldn't you agree? Oh, maybe I could even fight a hero today. Who knows? To make things interesting, I walked toward the gate as alarms went off, indicating trespassers. Within a heartbeat, I sprinted off and hid behind a tree, avoiding the security cameras that were attempting to catch a glimpse of me. After about 30 seconds, a few staff members whom I recognized as Eraserhead, Present Mike, and Ectoplasm came out, followed by Hound Dog, Vlad King, Snipe, and basically all the other faculty members. Last to arrive were Nedzu and All Might. My smile was replaced with a piercing glare at the sight of this so-called hero. Number 1 you say? Top you say? To me, he was just an unworthy hero that saved people for his idea of justice, like all the other fakes who wanted fame and money. Oh, it would please me much if his smile faded because of me. I couldn't contain my excitement at all. But right now, I smirked as all staff stood at the gate, preparing for a patrol in case anyone decided to approach UA again. By the time they left, they also left the gate wide open. It was as if the school itself was begging for me to go in. I looked behind me just in case and dashed into the school while deactivating the security system. Yes, I could have done that sooner, but it's fun to watch the heroes panic, even if it's just a little bit. Within minutes, I found the room where I wanted to be, the staff room. I opened the door, revealing desks belonging to all the teachers. Everything was perfectly according to plan. I rummaged through the files, starting with the desk labeled Aizawa Shoda, also known as Eraserhead. I considered myself lucky. I had already found a folder containing information about an upcoming excursion for Class 1A students, and All Might would be there. Moving on to the other teachers' desks, I realized that All Might had devoted himself to focusing on Class 1A, and Eraserhead was their homeroom teacher. As the great villain I was, I returned to Eraserhead's desk and took the list of students from 1A. Skimming through their profiles, I found Kaken listed. Quirk. Explosion. That quirk frustrated me. I couldn't help but curse him in my mind. The memories of the torment he had put me through flooded back. I despised him. Looking out the window, I saw a teacher approaching from a distance. I quickly grabbed the profiles and a copy of the excursion materials and casually made my way back to the front gates of UA. The first teacher to arrive was Eraserhead. We had been crossing paths quite a bit lately. Maybe we had some kind of bond from a previous life? Still, we should probably stop running into each other. What a coincidence, Eraserhead. I heard All Might is teaching. Did he finally decide to abandon his title as the symbol of peace? Did he realize he was just a fake all along? Oh, how sad. Before I could finish, Eraserhead caught me off guard with a swift kick to my thumb. TSK, Eraser. That was quite foolish, you know. I have abs, I said proudly. Eraserhead seemed irritated by my comment and didn't want to engage with me. Well, I would just have to make him speak then. I believe I've told you this, but I just want to repeat it every time I see you because you're just so impressive. He snapped back at me with a piercing gaze filled with rage. His hair rose, and red light emitted from his eyes as he activated his quirk. I am a hero. If you truly admire me as much as you claim, why did you choose the path of a villain? If you really admired me, you should know that heroes and villains are meant to fight each other. I returned his kick with one aimed at his side ribs, targeting another pressure point I had learned. I hate lectures, I remarked as he fell to the ground, grasping his ribs in pain, though his eyes still burned with rage and a hint of fighting spirit. It seemed he was searching for answers regarding my actions, so I decided to provide some. Besides, I never said I admired you for your heroic actions, did I? I admire you because you fight quirkless. You give hope to those without quirks. It's a shame you chose to go underground. Very few people know about you. I sensed heroes approaching from every direction, so I knew I had to leave. I enjoyed this talk. I'll see you soon, okay? Wait for me. And with that, I vanished. Eraserhead's POV. Before I could finish my sentence, he kicked me in the ribs. I groaned, trying to keep myself from collapsing. It was painful, especially since I didn't have a particularly muscular build. I hate lectures, he stated simply. I was confused but maintained a poker face to show him I wasn't scared, even though I was somewhat intimidated. His piercing gaze seemed to see right through me, and I could only shiver under his glare. He radiated a crazy aura. Even with his calm demeanor, everything about him screamed death, hatred, and somehow sorrow. I sensed a small part of him crying out for help, but the majority was closed off, shrouded in emptiness. The more I looked at him, the more I felt his loneliness. I wanted to know more about him. I wanted to help him. It was strange to admit, but I felt an urge to assist a villain. Deep down, I knew that people often became villains out of fear and desperation, having lost something important. In a society like this, everyone made mistakes. Heroes weren't always right either. They might save people from villains, but who said heroes never acted villainous? He seemed to notice my curiosity. Besides, I never said I admired you because of your heroic actions, did I? I admire you because you fight quirkless. You give hope to quirkless people. It's a shame you decided to go underground. Very few people know about you. The word quirkless resonated in my mind. Now that I thought about it, every time I attempted to erase his quirk, he didn't seem to be using it. Was he fighting without his quirk whenever I was around? Maybe he was just that strong, or perhaps he was quirkless. Was that why he became a villain? To take revenge on those who wronged him? But a quirkless child was extremely rare nowadays. As I finished my thoughts, I noticed him glance backward, where I faintly saw Hound Dog approaching. I enjoyed this talk. I'll see you soon, okay? Wait for me, Warp. The words sent chills down my spine. I didn't really want to see him anytime soon. I just realized, it seemed like his villain team had someone with the ability to create portals. Hound Dog found me and called the others back after sending me to the infirmary. I told them about my encounter with the villain who called himself Deku. Netza decided to upgrade the security system before school started again. It seems he took some information while we were away. It was a bad idea for everyone to leave the school. How could we have overlooked that? All Might muttered to himself while the other staff nodded in agreement. We weren't thinking straight. I also shared my assumptions about this boy and the vibe he gave me. Was it still too late to save him? Because somehow I felt like there was still hope. After I gave Muriken the information he needed, I went up to my room and took a short nap. "Zukin," came a voice just as I lay down on my bed. I groaned and sat up, facing Muriken. "What do you want? Can't you see I'm trying to sleep?" I complained to my brother. He rolled his eyes and sat next to me. "It's about the information you provided us. We can make our debut soon. As the League of Villains, together. You're coming, right?" I found myself caught up in his excitement as he explained the plans for our attack on UA, specifically targeting All Might. Muriken was really passionate about the upcoming attack, and everyone in the league was hyped. I could easily devise a clever plan in an instant. After our discussion, I was called by Sensei himself, and Kuramama warped me to him. "Sensei, how can I assist you?" I asked politely, hoping to earn a spot among his favorites. I wanted to be superior to Muriken. I heard him laugh, a menacing sound, but I could tell he was genuinely pleased. "My boy, Deku." I smiled at the mention of my villain name. "I called you here to assist me with my project. I know you have intelligence that rivals Nizu's, so I want you to help me improve my newest creation, Nomu." As he finished, a blue bird human-like creature stepped out from the shadows, towering over me. I wasn't fazed. In fact, I could already list a few flaws just from the way it moved. After inspecting the Nomu and its quirks, I suggested changes to ensure it could overpower All Might. Of course, I'd be delighted if I were the one to finish him off, but if this was what Sensei wanted, I couldn't oppose it. Before long, the new school year started, and the USJ field trip was only a week away. During their first week of school, we in the League of Villains had been planning our moves. I played it cautious, considering every possible countermeasure if something unexpected occurred. For instance, if All Might wasn't present, what would we do? That morning, I sensed he wouldn't be participating in the USJ event. We were frustrated, of course. We had planned everything just for him to back out. But I had already prepared for this. "We're going to attack anyway, it doesn't matter. We can lure All Might out with our attacks by letting one of their students inform the teachers, then, you know the rest." We gathered our belongings, confident in our seemingly flawless plan. However, I underestimated the abilities of UA students, especially Kaken, and that was my downfall. The moment we stepped out of the portal formed by Kurogyri, multiple students noticed us. A few pointed me out, which flattered me. I couldn't believe I was that popular. Did I have my own merch? I scanned through Class 1A and locked eyes with Eraserhead, their homeroom teacher. It seemed fate had brought us together again. The moment we made eye contact, he dashed forward with his quirk activated, presumably aiming for me. I braced myself for the impact and caught his punch right on target. "Eraser, how many times do I have to tell you? Your speed doesn't match mine, and that punch was too weak. You'll need more to land a hit on me." I decided to spare him so he could protect his students. True, I wanted to see them suffer, but my top priority was to lure All Might, not to beat up useless opponents. Kurogyri. With a single command, Shigaraki sent Kurogyri to SER, the students to different zones in USJ. Each zone was handled by rookie villains alongside one of our commanders, or high-rated villains from the league, which included Dabi, Himiko, Spinner, Twice, Compress, Mustard, and Magna. There was supposedly another commander named Muscular, but I accidentally eliminated him during one of my practices. I swear I didn't mean to kill him, let's just say he was too weak. While the commanders fought off students, Shigaraki and I stayed in the main atrium, preparing to face Eraser and the others. Kurogyri seemed to have let the Four Eyes go, and I faintly saw him dash towards the exit with his engine. The remaining students were all behind 13, another pro hero, but not very strong in combat. She relied solely on her quirk to save people from natural disasters. To teach her a lesson, I walked over to the stairs, but Eraser would have stopped me despite being in a pinch himself. You're quite something, Eraser. I expected you to struggle with so many villains. Seems like I miscalculated, huh? Well, why don't all of you attack him at once? I suggested to my fellow villains, noticing he was struggling. But I was taken off guard by how quickly he defeated them right after I looked away, which frustrated me. How did they think they could become villains? Deku, leave Eraser to me. Kurogiri needs backup. Shigaraki messaged me before heading to deal with Eraserhead. I landed in front of 13 and used all my fingers to grab her weapon, which decayed instantly. I had gained that quirk from Shigaraki. Dabi contacted me through the earpiece. Deku Shoto is here, he told me. So, why are you telling me that? I asked, but Dabi seemed to ignore my question. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Eraser being overwhelmed by Nomu, and for some reason, I felt an urge to intervene. I resisted it. Emotions were overwhelming. I didn't want them, especially not on a mission. I was about to destroy Eraser to rid myself of these feelings when All Might made his entrance. Fret not, because I am here, he announced proudly at the entrance, but his expression was serious. I smirked at the sight of a weakened All Might. I wondered if he could stand a chance against Nomu. I had modified Nomu to have shock manipulation, so it should be fine. I see. You're here too, kid, All Might said, his expression hardening. You've done a lot of bad deeds, and we heroes tried to save you, but now you've crossed the line. For a moment, I flinched but quickly regained my composure. He was intimidating and I couldn't help but squirm under his gaze. Oh, is that so, All Might? Maybe you shouldn't have wasted your time on me. I can't be cured, and you should know that better than anyone. I am a wild card. I was cursed by you, and for that, I will forever loathe you. I clenched my fist. You cannot become a hero. I'm sorry, young man. If I told you that villains are often those who dreamed of being heroes but were denied, would you believe me? I was born with the blood of a hero, dreamed of being one, but now I was a villain. The irony was that All Might had crushed my dream. I narrowly dodged an explosive attack that nearly hit me. My scarf was slightly burnt, but thankfully it was fire-resistant. Hey, what is the meaning of this? The voice belonged to my childhood friend, Kaken. Kaken, it's so nice to see you again. I saw you at the entrance exam, you were so cool. I chirped, giving him the smile he hated. All Might remained silent, waiting for the perfect moment. I noticed he was activating One for All. Instead of dodging, I charged at him and flew across the USJ, hitting the wall hard. So this was the power of a weakened All Might. He was still strong, but not at his prime. I charged back at All Might, ready to punch him, but when I made contact, nothing happened. My quirk. It didn't work on One for All, just like it didn't work on All for One. I realized I was still weak and incapable. I stood up, holding myself together. Nomu attack, I managed to say, my voice strained. Nomu went straight for All Might after receiving the command, landing a heavy punch. For several minutes, All Might and Nomu engaged in an endurance battle. All Might was clearly at a disadvantage but continued to fight back. He concentrated all his power for one last blow. 1,000,000,000% Detroit smash, he shouted, landing a powerful punch that sent Nomu flying through the sky and landing somewhere in the forest. By the time he finished with Nomu, light engulfed Yuze as All Might shielded his eyes. The explosion was powerful, and he couldn't believe Bakugo had managed to pull that off. He recalled how Deku had referred to himself as a wild card, which made his heart skip a beat before he dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by the heat and his weakened state. Realization struck him. He recognized this kid, the one who had once asked if a quirkless person could become a hero. He had expected Deku to give up on his dream, but he never anticipated that he would become a villain and finally obtain a quirk. He understood now that Deku was the one responsible for the flames back then. Regret flooded his mind as memories of a painful past surged forth. Midoriya. Izuku. Forgive me, he whimpered weakly before slumping to the ground as the flames subsided. Deku's POV. Nomu attack. I commanded the beast, which charged at All Might and slammed a fist into his face. At least All Might wasn't quick enough to react. Deku, you alright? By that time, Shigaraki had made his way over to me and offered support. Yes, I am, thank you, Shigaraki. Don't sweat it, you're too rash, he commented on my boldness before returning to observe the battle. What Shigaraki didn't notice was how Kaken was slowly sneaking up behind us, ready to ambush. Die, he shouted, triggering Shigaraki's reaction. He snapped around just as Kaken's explosions erupted. I was fed up with Kaken's quirk. He always thought he was amazing just because he had everything. I allowed him to hit me, which also gave me access to his quirk. Oh, shitty, Deku took my attack? Do you really want to die? He taunted, dust swirling around us as I took a moment to calm myself from the overwhelming attacks from both Kaken and All Might. No doubt he had grown stronger, but no matter what quirk my opponent used, it would only lead to my victory. Oh, do you want to know what it feels like to be destroyed? I can help you, and you don't even need to thank me. I waited for the smoke to clear so he could see my face when I pulled down my scarf, wanting him to regret everything he had done. Kaken, you are someone who should never have existed in this universe. It was because of people like you that villains were born. So in a way, you're the villain here. A smile crept onto my face, my cheeks hurt, but I felt exhilarated at the thought of Kaken's blood. I wanted to understand his perspective, to be equal. Hey Kaken, karma has no menu. You get served what you deserve. I told him before engulfing my hands with explosive substances, resting my palms in front of his face. Explosion, Stage 2, Power times 3. A massive explosion erupted, destroying everything in USJ. I realized this was Kaken's quirk amplified, and I wanted to use it more on him. I wanted to see him suffer. Hey Kaken, how was it? How does it feel? It feels good, right? That's what I felt all those years. And this was just the first hit. Remember all those times you tormented me? I'm just being fair. I think I smiled too much, my eyes twitched as my cheek went numb. But who cares? I just wanted to have some fun. Deku, that's enough. I heard Dabi call out to me, holding an unconscious Shoto. I instantly calmed at the sight of him. Why is Shoto-kun here? Dabi looked confused but let go of him, and he dropped to the floor, wincing in pain. No words were exchanged. You've done enough damage to USJ, and you've injured some of us. Shigaraki got knocked out from the force, Toga got a few burns, and Compress is trapped under some debris because of that explosion. Besides, the pro heroes are on their way, we should retreat. He patted my head, and I looked down in shame. I lost control again, but at least I hadn't unleashed my assault mode. Let's go. I walked over to Shigaraki, Compress, and Himiko, picking them up with Dabi and Moonfish's help. Moonfish and Mustard were backups. Kurogyri opened a warp gate, and we left the scene. Before I completely merged in, I heard a gunshot, possibly from Snipe, and a few weak, near inaudible words. I'm sorry. Please, come back. I recognized his voice. Kaken, what are you sorry for? We returned safely to the bar, where Sensei treated the wounds from the explosion I caused. I didn't have the courage to face them that night. Everything was a mess. Our attack had barely been an hour, but it was already chaotic. True, I had overwhelmed All Might with my last explosion and destroyed the training grounds for heroes, but to me, it was a complete failure. Everyone followed the plan I made. Except for me. I was frustrated. Instead of staying in my room, I thought that hunting would ease my troubled mind. I grabbed a wig and some contacts just in case, jumped out the window, and started to search for prey. During my walk around the city, I encountered a few students from Class 1A who were miraculously unharmed. It seemed they were on their way to visit friends in the hospital. Hey, I heard Bakugo got injured. It was assumed that he got his wounds from an explosion, but why would he set himself up? Unless it's some villain with a copy quirk. A pink insect walked alongside her few friends. I wanted to see Kaken, I wanted to see his face. Maybe he's horrified? Traumatized? I want to know. I can't let my thoughts spiral out of control. I can't reach that dangerous stage again. Holy cow, then that means the next stage is even more dangerous. Wait, what about assault mode? Without realizing it, I followed the UA students to a hospital, where I assumed Kaken might be. It reminded me. Why did Dabi collect Shoto? I forgot. I'm actually glad I brought my wig and contacts everywhere I go. Now I could visit them without raising any suspicions. It didn't take long until Kaken's classmate came out from his shared room with Shoto. Visiting hours had ended, but I sneaked in anyway. Hi. I put on an act, trying to appear shy. Kaken didn't seem like his usual self, he just turned away. Weird. I'd expect him to yell at me to get out. Shoto was also very quiet, not that I knew much about him, just encountered him once. I sighed and decided to drop the act. It's me. Your favorite villain, Deku. They both turned to me at the same time with widened eyes, but Kaken looked down almost immediately. You. Shoto began, I remember you. Of course, how could he forget me? Kaken kept looking down, refusing to meet my gaze. I walked toward his bed, and Shoto struggled a bit but eventually gave up. I wondered what Dabi did to him, not important right now. Kaken. He finally looked up but still avoided my eyes. I want to know. How does it feel? To be humiliated? He gulped hard, and I was disappointed at his reaction. If he'd at least yelled at me, I wouldn't feel so guilty. No. I can't feel this. Those aren't feelings a villain should have, I learned that years ago. It felt the worst. I hated it. It was very painful, he admitted, at least he was honest. Then he finally looked me dead in the eyes and said, it felt the worst because I've been desperately trying to protect you, only for you to be turned into a villain. I hated it because I didn't realize how much pain you must have endured during those years I bullied you. It was very painful because I was the cause of your actions. The cause of this path you chose. The path against the dream you'd always had. That's why. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. It was the first time I had ever seen Kaken cry, and when a man cries sorrow, you know it's genuine. It was heartbreaking. I never wanted to witness a scene like this because I knew it would bring me back to how I was before. But right now, at this moment, I couldn't care about anything except for the explosive boy in front of me. It felt like my heart was shattering. I knew I shouldn't trust the one who had bullied me for so long, but that didn't mean I couldn't feel sympathy. Right? I miss you too, Kaken. But I can't. Because I am a villain. No, I am the villain. The Nomu tech. I heard the nerd say, still unable to believe he's a villain. That means we would have to fight each other, right? As much as I hate it, there's no choice. But there's no way I could ever defeat him, his quirk. Don't make things worse than it is. Blah, who cares about what the old hags say? Let's make things worse. I crept behind his back with a handsy guy helping him up. Only means one thing that I know of. Either his quirk wasn't activated when All Might punched him, or his quirk doesn't work against All Might. Well, this guy isn't invincible after all. I'm going to crush him to bits. Die! I shouted, launching my attack. But who cares? I will be so fast, Deku couldn't even react. As expected, he got hit with my explosion and fell back to the floor. Yes, Deku, this is how it should be. You're always behind me, always below me, so that I can keep watch over you. My vision was covered in dust. I couldn't see anything at all. Oh, shitty Deku took my attack? Did you want to die that much? Of course, I didn't mean it, but I kept provoking him. I heard people snap out of something if they were asked questions about their past. I just want your well-being, Deku. Don't you dare go villain mode with me. My quirk could never match yours, I admit. But with that quirk, you can enter UA without a problem. So why? Why villain? Was it? Oh, do you want to know? That feeling of being destroyed? I can help you, and you don't even need to thank me. Definitely my fault. I knew it. I wanted to say sorry. But my pride wouldn't let me. Deku seemed to have waited for the dust to settle. I realized he knew exactly where I was even with all this dust around. He could have taken me out right on the spot. My explosion seemed to have destroyed his scarf. It no longer covered his face. His expression was filled with malice, radiating an ominous aura. The killing intent was clear on his face. What was worse was that cut I gave him 10 years ago. It gave him a nasty look. But even with all the hatred that surrounded me, I couldn't help but feel fear in the air. I looked into his eyes. They screamed for help, masked with determination, but it could never fool me. Kaken, you are someone who should never have existed in this universe. It was only because of humans like you that villains were born. So I guess in a way, you're the true villain here. His smile was wide and unsettling, and I could see the strain it put on his cheeks. He scrunched his eyebrows, making me feel vulnerable for a moment. Hey Kaken, karma has no menu. You get served what you deserve. His quirk? No, my quirk. Was that why he allowed me to hit him before? I knew his quirk by heart. He had told me about it before. I was in serious danger. He moved his palms toward my face, a direct attack that would surely end me. But to my surprise, he moved his palms beside my head, as if deliberately avoiding a fatal blow. Was it really intentional? Then it happened. A loud explosion echoed, and with that destructive power, Deku could obliterate everything and everyone in USG. Hey Kaken, how was it? How does it feel? It feels good, right? That's what I felt during all those years. And this is just one time. I think it'll only be fair if I hit you a few more times with this amplified version. I'm being fair. This person was unhinged. There was no way this was the Deku I knew. But he was. He had always been suffering from this pain. Just before I fainted, a figure with stitched-up skin calmed him down, allowing me to rest without worry. They exchanged a few words, and then a portal appeared, similar to what we had seen earlier. I wanted to apologize, but my pride, what was pride anyway? I'm sorry. Please, come back. Izuku. I was too weak to form a better sentence, so I put together simple but meaningful words, hoping he could hear me. After they left, I couldn't hold on anymore. I succumbed to the pain and fainted. When I regained consciousness that night, I was surrounded by my underlings, who stayed until visiting hours were over. A boy about my age entered the room. Hi, he muttered. I wasn't in the mood to talk, so I turned away after glancing at his face. Even the half-and-half guy was unusually quiet. It's me, your favorite villain, Deku. He sighed and pulled off his wig as I turned to him, immediately looking down at my bed. I couldn't face him after everything that had happened. I remember you. Icy hot new Deku? I felt his presence getting closer, and he stood in front of me. Kaken, he began. I looked up but still avoided eye contact. I want to know. How does it feel? To be humiliated. How does it feel? I actually didn't know. I swallowed the lump of pride in my throat to speak. It felt the worst. I hated it. It was very painful. I gave in to the tension and looked at him, feeling empty. It felt the worst because I've been desperately trying to protect you, only for you to be turned into a villain. I hated it because I didn't realize how much pain you must have endured during those years I bullied you. It was very painful because I was the cause of your actions. The cause of this path you chose. The path against the dream you'd always had. That's why. I'm sorry. I'm very, very sorry. I said sorry, yet my heart still felt heavy. I knew I couldn't sleep peacefully until Deku came back to me. Tears escaped my eyes. This wasn't like me at all. What had he done to me? I felt horrible. He didn't speak. He watched me in my vulnerable state. I wouldn't mind if he decided to end me right now. I deserved it. I remembered telling him to jump off a roof in hopes of gaining a quirk in his next life. I wanted him to end me, hoping to be a better person in my next life. I used to hate him looking down on me, but now I realized he had never looked down on me. He had always looked out for me. How foolish I had been. I was the worst person alive. I miss you. Stupid nerd. I miss you so much. Midoriya Izuku. Soon, everything returned to normal. Nearly. There were zero villain activities around. The villains were definitely planning something. The sports festival is coming up, train well. That's all. Eraserhead, currently Aizawa-sensei, announced to the class about their upcoming event. Everyone was pumped, except for two, Bakugo and Todoroki. They were still recalling the events after the USJ attack. Everything felt unreal while their classmates tried to lighten the mood. Shut up. Can't you see I'm trying to rest? Bakugo yelled at his classmates, frustrated. Bakugo, can I talk to you? Todoroki approached Bakugo and pulled a chair to sit across from him. What do you want, half and half? If it's about Deku, then leave. I met Deku before. Or rather, Midoriya Izuku. The moment he said Deku's real name, Bakugo grabbed his collar, demanding, how the hell do you know this guy? His breathing was harsh, and the air in the room felt dense. Everyone else took this chance to leave. I was his target. Bakugo dropped his gaze, shocked. It was about 6 years ago. He spared my life. Silence hung in the air until Todoroki broke it. What was your relationship with him? None of your business, half and half. Bakugo slammed his hand on the table, frustration bubbling beneath the surface as he tried to process everything. Before they knew it, the sports festival had arrived, an event to showcase their skills to the world. Without a doubt, Deku was watching. Bakugo was chosen to give the opening speech. I will win, he declared, met with boos from the crowd and his classmates. The festival kicked off with a perilous obstacle race. Bakugo breezed through, claiming victory, with Todoroki trailing behind. The second round, the cavalry battle, was uneventful until Todoroki snatched Bakugo's 10 million points, securing first place. Then came the final event, the battle tournament, which particularly caught Deku's attention. It was a perfect opportunity to observe the students' ultimate moves and formulate strategies against them. The first match featured a student from general studies with a quirk that controlled people's actions. Deku quickly identified the quirk's flaws, realizing it would be advantageous for villains. Unfortunately, the opponent knew how to avoid activation and Shinso lost. Next up was Todoroki against Zero. In a matter of seconds, Todoroki trapped Zero in an ice cage, securing an easy win. The third match saw Ibra from Class 1B emerge victorious, though the battle was forgettable. In the fourth match, Ida faced off against Hatsum from the support course, but it too lacked excitement. Then came the highly anticipated match between Bakugo and Uraraka. Deku was particularly intrigued. He recognized Uraraka's strength and determination, believing she would become a great hero someday. Bakugo unleashed explosions, wearing Uraraka down. Thank you for keeping your eyes on me, she smiled before unleashing a meteor shower of rocks. With a powerful explosion, Bakugo deflected the rocks, and a final hit caused Uraraka to faint, making him the victor. Deku smiled to himself, you got me on edge, Kaken. The next round featured Tetsu and Kirishima, with Kirishima emerging victorious. Following that, Todoroki faced Kaminari, winning easily with another ice cage. Bakugo continued his winning streak against Kirishima, and then it was time for the final rounds. Todoroki faced Ida, who made a full sprint but was quickly captured by Todoroki's ice. Another victory for Todoroki. The next match was Bakugo vs Tokoyami, where Bakugo discovered Tokoyami's weakness and used his quirk to create blinding light. Finally, the moment Deku had been waiting for arrived. Bakugo against Todoroki. The battle began with Todoroki using ice and Bakugo countering with explosions. This back and forth continued until Bakugo, feeling the chill from Todoroki's ice, urged him to use his fire. For a moment, Todoroki ignited in flames, but the sound of his father's voice and a brief flashback caused his flames to extinguish. Bakugo, sensing an opportunity, concentrated heat into his palms and unleashed a massive explosion. Even with a wall of ice for protection, Todoroki was pushed out of bounds and lost. The crowd erupted in cheers as the festival concluded. So how was it, Deku-kun? Toga asked, skipping over to sit on Deku's lap. It was great. I learned more about those students. It's a blessing that Shoto-kun refused to use his fire quirk. It'll definitely give us an advantage, he remarked, aware of the villains present in the room. Weeks passed, and Deku's training intensified. He learned to control his power based on the stage he was in, using varying percentages for different effects. Why don't you bring him in, Kurojiiri? Shigaraki asked. A portal opened, and a villain with red scarves and knives stepped through. What is this? He demanded. After a brief exchange, he declared, I will never serve you for your childish intentions. I want to leave. His gaze landed on Deku. You're that kid who killed a lot of people over the years, Deku, huh? Deku met his gaze. Got any problems? I did that out of satisfaction. Do you want to kill me now? He challenged with a calm smile. If you kill All Might, then I won't hesitate to kill you, the villain warned, sliding his thumb across his neck. But Deku remained unfazed, a new determination rising within him. If that's the case then, I'll see you soon. With another smile, Kurogiri warped Stain back to Hosu City. I don't like him. You said I can destroy anything I don't like, right? Shigaraki asked the man behind the TV monitor. As much as I don't like your excuse for killing, yes you can, he replied. Then can I have your Nomus? Shigaraki asked again. I currently only have 6, still in development, so I will give you 3 of them, he replied, having Kurogiri transport the bird-like creatures to him. Shigaraki, you won't mind if I come with you, right? Deku walked next to their leader, looking him dead in the eyes. Of course, having you with me means we'll be stronger. Shigaraki laughed maniacally as Kurogiri opened a warp for them to go through. Multiple bird-like figures emerged and began their attack on Hosu City. Shigaraki, I have errands to run, Deku said before leaping away into the darkness. Meanwhile, the UA students were allowed to go to their internships. Todoroki just so happened to be at Hosu while Ida worked there. With the hero killer, Stain, roaming free in the alleys, the League of Villains with their Nomus, and a dangerous child running wild in public, things were about to go south. And karma always finds its way to you. There was a time when I felt like I was slowly fading away. Help me. From the moment I was born, I learned that not everything would go my way. No matter how hard I tried, things just didn't go as planned. I was a kid with a cursed life. My father left my mother and me, and my mother passed away the moment I was born. But even so, I felt blessed because Auntie Mitsuki took me in, and I became part of the Bakugo family. They became my legal guardians, providing me with food, shelter, and a friend I always wanted. That was until I turned 4. It was supposed to be the time when kids got their quirks. Kaken received his amazing explosions, but I never got mine. I tried to stay positive, thinking maybe it would come later. I hoped my quirk would be as awesome as Kaken's or even All Might's. Then I could become a hero and save everyone with a smile. How naive I was. Auntie Mitsuki took me to the quirk doctor right after I turned 5. What if I didn't have a quirk? Would Auntie Mitsuki kick me out? I felt like an embarrassment to their perfect family. Then it was confirmed. My extra joint identified me as quirkless. Deep down, I knew it would be hopeless, but you couldn't just stop a person's dream. I was thankful that Auntie Mitsuki allowed me to stay with them. I felt lucky to have a family. But nothing lasts forever. That night, Auntie Mitsuki and Uncle Masaru were held captive by some villains. I was awake the whole time, witnessing heroes standing by, refusing to save them. One of those heroes was All Might. At that time, he was still at his prime and could have saved them easily. So why didn't he? Yet I still held on to hope, thinking maybe All Might had his reasons for not intervening. He might have let my guardians die, but he still captured the villain, so it wasn't all that bad. Right? A hero can't always save everyone, and I am very sorry for their loss, he said in a news report following the incident. Kaken had been asleep that whole night, so he didn't know what I saw. I still had faith in the #1 hero. He was #1 for a reason, right? All Might. Can a quirkless person like me become a hero like you? I asked my idol hopefully, already knowing the answer. But I still wanted to hear it. Maybe he'd say something like, if you keep training, nothing is impossible. But what I got was a void of nothingness. You can't be a hero, that's the reality. That reality hit me at the young age of 5. And that's when it all started. We had a new guardian not long after, and she took care of both of us. Kaken was depressed over his parents' death and vented his anger on me, and I let him. I didn't mind. I thought I could use the physical pain to cover my mental ones. But what I didn't know was that each injury he inflicted on me caused even more internal suffering. People said the pain from physical injuries could never match that of mental pain, and they were right. One night, Kaken helped with dinner. He was holding a knife as he walked out of the kitchen. I sat on the sofa, unaware of my surroundings. Kaken came in front of me, venting again, and lost grip on his knife, which flew in my direction. I was so stunned that I couldn't dodge it. I was lucky it didn't cause serious harm. At least it was only the skin. The wound stretched from the corner of my lips to my jawbone, and it was extremely deep. I nearly fainted from blood loss when I arrived at the hospital. Then, when I started elementary school, the string snapped. I lost everything. I couldn't feel the pain Kaken inflicted, nor could I shed tears. It didn't make sense. I was just the stupid Deku yesterday, and the next day. I didn't even care about the world anymore. Kaken had an army of friends who would torment me just to make themselves look good. They weren't strong at all, but because I didn't fight back, they took advantage of my vulnerable state. One time, I got home with all sorts of injuries after a trip to the hospital. Kaken rushed towards me with widened eyes. I couldn't tell what he was thinking, and I didn't bother to find out. So, I pushed past him before he could do me any more damage. That night, I couldn't sleep. Kaken's sobs kept me awake. I wondered what happened, but it's not like he'd tell me or anything, right? From that day onward, no one bullied me except for Kaken and his closest friends. He scared the other bullies away from me, keeping me to himself. Though, if not for him, I might have been smiling, grateful that Kaken saved me from the others. But that was the past. These painful days repeated over and over. Each year, his quirk became more powerful, and each year, my injuries worsened. It wasn't until I was 7 that a villain came and changed my life. It was after school, so not many students were around. The teachers were inside the faculty room, leaving only me and a few of Kaken's friends. This villain kept repeating that he wanted to hear our screams, that he wanted us to suffer. Too bad I couldn't scream for him because I had lost all my breath and moisture to the one eye. Trusted. He destroyed everything in front of me, yet I felt unfazed by it. My heart was empty, there was no content in it. Kaken came out from behind me, unaware of the villain in front of us. He grabbed me by my collar and threw me to the ground while sending explosions along the way. But when he looked up, I could barely make out his expression. It was pure horror. He was scared, and anyone could tell that. I made my decision. I would never let anyone hurt him or even touch him. Kaken would be the greatest hero in history. Heroes protect people, but when a hero needs protection, who will provide it? I was willing to be the shield for Kaken's future. I've lost my biological parents, my guardians, my dream, my friend, and my soul. What more was there to lose? I walked toward the villain, an unknown force drawing me closer. In that moment, I felt Kaken's hand grip tightly on my wrist, refusing to let go. Kaken, that's enough. You've already done more than enough damage to me. I paused and saw his trembling mouth. Are you all right? You look pale. But don't worry, I'll be your shield. You can rest behind me. Even if it meant dying, I wanted to protect him. Not only did he look terrified, but I felt Kaken shaking. He was asking for help. I will protect you, Kaken. Now, who wants to be my test subject? The villain sneered. Just once in my life, I wanted to be a hero to someone, even if that dream had been shattered. The tiny ember still burned inside my heart. I couldn't resist. A person stood in front of me that needed protection. I wanted to save Kaken no matter what. After determining my longing to protect him, my body started to move on its own. I walked slowly and calmly to the villain, but every inch of my body was screaming with fear. Oh, are you protecting that brat? Judging by how he just acted, he must hate you, right? So why are you protecting him, huh? He was insane from his looks to the aura around him. Kaken is always very nice to me. He did nothing wrong. Don't let the fear get to you, Midoriya Izuku. Focus on saving Kaken. Everything is for his sake. I held up my hand in a protective stance in front of Kaken. I just wanted to be a hero, even just for one person. Then I felt it. A sharp pain through my chest, as if an arrow had pierced my already empty heart. I looked at the villain blankly. Everything was a blur, my vision hazy. My whole body was shaking. My eyes felt like they had collapsed in on themselves. Nothing was okay. But I clearly remembered my hands being covered with a sticky substance. We have the same quirk? I faintly heard him scream. Yes, a scream. Yet so distant and foreign. It felt like I was drowning in a vast ocean of gloominess. I didn't know what I was doing. My body was just working on its own. My brain was calling out for me, trying to hold on to my spirit. But at the same time, it felt like my brain was forcing me out of my own body. I could only let myself relax and go with the flow. Before that, though, I heard a voice. Let me take control, you'll be in good hands. My hands were covered in a black, gooey substance, and my eyes turned pitch black. Kaken and his friends were shocked at the sight of my power. The aura emitted from it screamed danger, and it didn't take a genius to know how powerful it could be. Black electricity surrounded his body as he whipped his arms up, the dark substance instantly transforming into a spear of malevolence. Why not give yourself a taste of your own medicine, huh? The voice was not Izuku's. It sounded possessed, venomous. Nothing made sense to Bakugo, but he knew he should rely on his prey, even though his pride resisted. The black arrow found its way to the villain, striking the same spot as Izuku's wound. From a few floors above, a teacher watched secretly from inside the school, recognizing Izuku's power. Found him. The son of the ace, he whispered to himself, expecting no one to hear. His true power. Karma has no menu. Izuku began as he punched the villain, gooey slime swirling around him. You get served what you deserve. He was breathing heavily, the effects of his newfound quirk still overwhelming him. He turned to his bullies, his darkened irises reflecting his struggle. Kaesi-chan. Did I protect you? He managed before collapsing, overwhelmed by his power. What monstrous power? Is he secretly a villain or what? One of Bakugo's minions whispered. I know, right? How scary. Another replied. Don't even talk about it. He might come to target us next. Bakugo looked down at Izuku, his expression pained and confused. You protected me, all right? Damn it, why didn't you tell me anything? Izuku, he thought. Meanwhile, the teachers debated whether to expel Izuku. With his quirk, no one in the school was safe, including themselves. They had heard the story from the teacher who witnessed the confrontation. That teacher, still looking out the window at his injured students, thought, Midoriya Izuku. He will be a great weapon. After the incident, Izuku's bullies scrambled away, except for Kaken, who watched him secretly. Izuku hoped Kaken's intentions were protective, but he also felt like a nightmare. He yearned for freedom from everything that tormented him. But things only worsened when a group of villains targeted him because of his quirk. He felt their greedy eyes on him, and while he couldn't blame them, he recognized the darker side of human nature, longing. He endured their torment daily after school as they sought to exploit his quirk for their own ambitions. It was a weak excuse for villainy. When he refused to use his quirk, they resorted to crueler methods, engulfing him in flames, electrocuting him, or suffocating him. It was painful, but he couldn't let them have his power. Then everything crashed. He had had enough. They had driven him into a corner where he had no choice but to fight back. During one of their tortures, they surrounded him with flames, foolishly unaware of his quirk. With no idea how to control it, he unleashed everything inside him: anger, sorrow, fear, revenge. Everything turned black, just like before. Flames seeped through his body as he longed for the burning sensation, but it was replaced by a feeling of dread. He felt drained, but that wasn't truly him. The real Izuku was a coward, hidden deep inside, seeking protection. Yet the other side of him stood bravely against everyone in the room, showing immense power once again. You will pay, he declared, as the bottled-up emotions transformed into a nightmare. His eyes were pitch black, with a faint light shining beneath the surface. This isolated part of himself, filled with anger and sorrow, was something he refused to show anyone to protect them. Deep down, he knew what he was capable of and feared the consequences of acting recklessly. But now, he wanted to stand up for himself, at least once. He was in pain, and he felt justified in wanting it to end. Izuku stood glaring at everyone in the organization. I've suffered enough. If you don't want to die, run. But as he spoke, every exit was blocked off by fire. The cries for mercy filled the air. Some begged for their families, others for their lives. But all he heard was silence. With a swipe of his finger, the entire laboratory ignited in flames. Everyone inside was consumed by the fire. Just saying. Karma doesn't care about your life. He walked out of the building, never looking back. After life returned to his eyes, he found himself outside the terror he had once been in. But right now, the fire wasn't as horrible as how he felt, because he knew he was the one who caused it. Yet somehow, he wanted more. The screams were satisfying, as was the raging fire that had been burning around the laboratory. In the corner, a figure glanced over as the horror unfolded. All Might was terrified at the scene. He had fought villains before, but this was a whole new level of power. To see a child responsible for it was chilling. An amused villain approached the boy. "Did you just?" A voice came from behind him. Fear ran through his body as he slowly turned around to see a man with a stitched face and arms. "Did you just burn it down?" the man asked, amazed at the boy who was much younger than himself. Yes. I couldn't control my quirk and He hesitated, knowing he shouldn't blame his quirk. A part of him wanted to destroy as well. "I was the cause of it," he admitted. Izuku shut his eyes tightly, fearing this man would be furious, but instead, the man chuckled and ruffled his hair. "You're awesome, kid. Is your quirk about flames?" The boy looked into the man's eyes, which shone with a bright light as if he had finally found a source of life. In the corner, All Might hissed in a breath as the kid looked at the villain. He recognized this boy. He had met him a few weeks ago. What had happened in that time? The glint in the kid's eye could be seen from those who had lost all hope, from those who were turning down a dark path. "It's Hero Killer, Stain," a young hero called out from an alley, clearly unhappy at the sight of the man. "I don't want to kill a kid. Leave before I change my mind." The hero killer raised his sword as a warning, causing the kid to flinch. "I am here, carrying my brother's name to defeat you. Remember the name, Ingenium," the hero in training said with determination. "Oh, you mean that useless and powerless fake hero? He didn't even put up a great fight," Stain laughed. Ida clenched his jaw and fists, ready to attack. "I'll kill you," he shouted, lunging at the hero killer, aiming to slam his leg into Stain's face. With a flick, Stain moved his sword through Ida's thick armor, causing him to freeze in place. The hero killer was about to stab him when Deku jumped in, landing a kick on Stain's head, earning a scoff from the villain. "It's you again, kid? Leave before I decide something else." Deku dashed forward with incredible speed, drawing a blade from his pocket. He sliced Stain's left shoulder while grabbing his neck with his other hand. Then he jumped, using his small body to slam the hero killer to the ground. In a crouched position, he breathed as he removed his scarf, liking the blood off his blade, which paralyzed Stain. "I see. So this is how you defeat your prey, huh?" The smaller villain twirled his dagger between his fingers. "I seriously pity you. You had to be taken down by someone like me. You wanted All Might to be the one to kill you, right? I'm going to take his role." He was about to stab Stain when another hero in training appeared. The air around him warned of the threat closing in, the temperature dropping. "Shotoku-kun, your signature ice spikes," he mumbled as ice spikes emerged from the ground, speeding toward Deku. "I got your message, Ida. Are you okay?" He crouched beside the engine boy while keeping an eye on the two villains. "I can't move. I'm paralyzed," Ida replied. Then he lunged at the boy who was no longer wearing a scarf. "What did you do to him?" he asked, grabbing the collar of Deku's hoodie. "Engine boy? Or the hero killer?" Deku replied. "Because if it's the hero killer, I paralyzed him with his own quirk." This only made Todoroki tighten his grip in anger. "Oh, I thought you were concerned for your friend. Now you're also concerned about the villain? Besides..." Deku smiled nonchalantly at his opponent. "Are you sure heroes are allowed to kill?" Stain then questioned him. How? How are you using my quirk? What exactly is your quirk?" His voice was weak, unexpected for someone known as Hero Killer, Stain. Todoroki set him down, but the instant he did, he regretted it. Deku sliced his arm, causing the half-and-half hero to wince in pain. "One thing at a time, both of you. I used your quirk because of my quirk, easy explanation. As for you, he turned his attention back to the two heroes. I'm feeling exceptionally generous today. After I deal with this punk beside me, I'll leave you two here, and you'll be able to move again in time. Games aren't fun if you're not in top condition. He looked back at the hero killer with a gaze that didn't belong on a child's face. Let's hope you become a better person in your next life, shall we? His voice dripped with malice as he took Stain's sword and slowly injected it into his body, giving him a slow and painful end. The best way to die is an instant death. It won't cause you pain or anything. That's why people tend to jump off roofs when they end their lives. But you're someone who doesn't deserve a peaceful end. You're someone who should suffer. I'm doing this corrupted world a favor, after all. I'm just cleaning up the mess. Besides, the League wouldn't appreciate someone refusing to join us while still knowing our plans. Slowly, Deku's blade finally reached the core of his body, and Stain's pain vanished almost instantly, leaving only a villain with eyes wide open, streaming with tears and a silent scream. This is the endgame of a villain. No villains ever have a good ending. It's either a bad one or a worse one. Todoroki watched with widened eyes as the innocent-looking villain gave the hero killer a remorseful end, his whole body screaming for help until the moment the blade connected with his heart. Both Ida and Todoroki were frustrated they couldn't do anything to protect him. Even though he was a villain, he shouldn't just die like that. This boy was insane. He sighed and looked at the hero killer's lifeless body once again. To answer your question from before, it doesn't matter what quirk I have. Other than fulfilling my goal, everything else is useless. It doesn't make any difference. After all, it'll all be pointless once the story ends, isn't that right? It was a quirk only reserved for the best, and it just so happened that I was one of them. Those who were once quirkless would obtain this quirk if they had a strong longing to be a hero, to help society. Or so to say, it was a forced manifest quirk. The gods must have regretted every single day since I decided to be a villain. Before I met Dabi, people said I had a golden heart. That was before I was confirmed quirkless. So basically, I was deemed worthy and good enough to have this power. But of course, I turned into a villain and things happened. So yes, I believe the gods regretted it, probably wished they never gave the power to me. It was a name developed by my best friend, Kaken. I personally love this nickname because it could fully describe me. From the person who couldn't do anything, to the person who would do anything to achieve his goal. My quirk, karma. It was a power I could never fully control, even when I thought I did. Remember what happened at USJ? I was only at stage 2 and I had already blown up the whole place unconsciously. I did some training, but I was still nowhere near controlling my assault mode. I was dangerous. That's why Kaken needed to stay as far away from me as possible. My companions would often ask me to eliminate him, but I'd refuse, saying that I wanted him to suffer. Slowly to feel what I felt. Now I realized I didn't want him dead. After I killed Stain, I experienced what it really felt like when you wanted someone to suffer a slow death, and that wasn't how I felt about Kaken. Instead, I made that excuse to protect him. I didn't want him dead. Even after all he'd done. I never got mad at him. I couldn't bring myself to. He was someone I wanted to protect. Karma, please, don't kill him. I knew it had a mind of its own. Karma lived in me, but I needed Kaken alive. Who else would protect the world if I didn't protect him from myself? I have the power of karma. A power to use your opponent's quirk, an amplified version for a certain time period that I don't know. Depending on my emotional state, it determined the power I could use. Stage 1, calm mind 2 times the power. Stage 2, insanity 3 times the power. Stage 3, anger 4 times the power. Trump, assault mode, unknown power. I had never heard of anything about assault mode, but as generations passed, quirks tended to get stronger. I guess it was something developed over time, quirk singularity? Maybe. Dabi had always told me my quirk could be used to change the future, so that villains could also have a better ending. With my power, I could also make everyone fear me. The screams and everything. I didn't know when I started to find blood intriguing, nor did I realize when I liked knives. I just did. though for some reason I couldn't use my quirk on either All Might or All for One. I wondered what that meant. Was it because they were among those original quirks? I was a monster. Just like how people used to call me. No, people still called me that nowadays. Can everything just go back to how it was when I was younger? So I could choose my path once again. No, Deku, there's no way to turn back now. You will either have a bad or a worse end. If you step back, you lose. And the loser will have the worst ending. If you don't continue this path, you're better off dead already. Then why don't I just die? That thought had swirled in my head for years, but I never once tried it. After all, I was only human. And the one thing that scared all living beings was death. It was the scariest thing, and no one would even think about the day they die. It was just human instinct. So I didn't dare to. No one would need to know anything if I just shut myself down. No one would worry about me if I didn't show it. I don't want anyone to be worried. A Nomu swooped in and grabbed my back. Shigaraki must have wanted me or something. Probably time to go back. I saw Endeavor from a distance. He immediately sent his flames toward me. Flames. This flame was familiar. I wonder if Endeavor worked with those lowlifes. He's a pro hero. What am I even talking about? I allowed the flames to burn me. It didn't seem to have affected the Nomu. Maybe they modified it? Having said that, I got instantly thrown to the ground, landed in the League of Villains base. Deku-kun, you killed that BSTRD. I'm so proud of you. Teehee. Himiko skipped towards me, and I readied my hands to carry her. Thanks, Himiko. Stain just wasn't great. I set her down back on the floor, and Dabi walked towards me. Don't make them waste their precious time on you. I had a ton of fun tonight. What are we doing next? I forced a smile on my face, a smile that could mask everything away, all thanks to the practice I'd put in every night. Then we just chatted for a bit, starting dinner by the time Tamura came back. Just like a big family. Keep it that way. Todoroki's POV. After Deku left, I could faintly see my father's flame from the alley. Then, after a while, a few pro heroes came to get us out of there. After a little more time, Ida and I could move. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. He apologized to me. He had sent his location apparently during his confrontation with Stain before Deku stepped up. It's fine. We should be thanking Deku just this once for helping us. I quietly muttered, hoping my father didn't hear me because I knew how much he hated this villain. I agree. Though he was very brutal, he still saved us. Kind of. I could feel we both felt uneasy. The fact that we got saved by a villain who had an opportunity to kill us reflected how weak we really were, and Deku was the same age as us. That night, we went to separate rooms in the hospital. The next day, our classmates came to visit us, even Bakugo. Bakugo, can I talk to you? It's regarding him. He shot his head at me. Play extras, leave. With a single command, nearly everyone left. What are you still doing here, shitty hair? I said leave. Everything about him was screaming for the poor boy to go, explosions threatening to escape his palms. Okay, calm down dude, I just wanted to know what was so important. The explosions were only getting louder, and Kirishima wasted no time bolting out of the room. What about him? Bakugo turned his attention back to me. He was the one who saved us. He killed Stain. And the way he killed him. He was silent. It was pretty pleasant not to hear him shout for a while. What? He finally managed to utter. Shitty Deku would never kill. He couldn't even hurt a fly. Still, the look on his face told a different story. After all, I could see it too, that tender expression plastered on Deku's seemingly soulless face when he talked to us, completely masked by the glare of hatred he had directed at the hero killer. That was before. People change. Everything was bound to change. Right? I asked him in return. The boy could only painfully admit it, slowly nodding his head. I've always wanted to talk to him after realizing my mistake. But it was too late. Isn't it? He asked me, but I really didn't know how to reply. Part of me wanted to save him along with Bakugo, but another part told me it was useless. He was already a feared villain. We sat in silence, not knowing what to say anymore. What a messed up society we live in. Killing Stain made my gut churn. For some reason, this guy just had to mess with my head even when he was gone. Killed him what? Because of his ideals. I may be a villain now, but at least I have some common sense. Those people out there are heroes. They live to protect civilians. Who cares if they're fake or not? They're doing their job, and that's all that matters. However, a wave of guilt crashed through me, as if I was actually guilty for what I did. No, I am most definitely not guilty. I'm, after all, a villain. At least, I tried to convince myself multiple times that I am a villain. That never happened before the USJ incident. Meeting Kaken then was a mistake. I should have taken more time before even thinking I was ready. I couldn't feel guilty. I've killed a lot of people already. Killing came with my job. It's only natural. The way Kaken treated me before, he'd torture me till near death just so I'd heal and he'd hurt me more. It has been like that since I was announced quirkless. The pain I've gone through was indescribably painful. I shouldn't spend my precious time mulling over someone like him. Kaken is a person who shouldn't have existed. Shouldn't have been born. The wave of guilt was washed away by calmness. All types of distractions were gone. It was calm. Too calm, in fact. It was like peace before war, where everything was still and quiet. Deku is a monster. Quick, before he gets us too. Tell the other students. There's a monster roaming in school. Call the authorities on him. What are we even waiting for? Monster. Deku jolted awake, breathing a bit as he tried to catch his breath. Being called useless, worthless, or even a freak was one thing. Being a straight-up monster terrified him. Not to mention the lab assistants who wanted his power, they were just disgusting. Every single night he was haunted by dreams of his past, a past that was both unsettling and horrifying. Just thinking about it sent chills to the very core of his heart, which thumped loudly. It was as if the gods could sense his turmoil, and loud splatters began to ring outside the apartment he was staying in. Those splatters masked his racing heart, blending into the chaos outside. After a while of panicking, Deku finally calmed down a bit. Knowing himself, he wouldn't be able to sleep anymore. So he decided to take a late-night patrol around Mizudafu, where he was staying. By patrol, he meant to find targets to eliminate. At least he didn't target heroes, those who protected civilians. In fact, he believed he was doing them a favor. After all, without villains, heroes were just pebbles on the roadside, easily kicked aside, right? Deku took out the case containing his new villain costume, adjusted by All for One beforehand. This new costume no longer featured a scarf like his previous one. Instead, it included a high-tech gas mask, while the overall design remained similar. According to the instructions, there was an upgrade to the fireproof part, perhaps designed specifically for Katsuki. He grabbed a few knives from the case and crouched on the windowsill, looking down from 5 stories high. Not far away, a girl walked toward the street located right beneath Dabi's apartment. Deku gripped his weapon tightly and jumped down. The girl looked up, freezing in place directly under him. He smirked. The knife pierced through her skull effortlessly. The landing was softened as he was supported by her weight, allowing him to do a small flip and land on his feet. He stared at the corpse as rain washed away the blood. I wonder what All Might's blood tastes like, he mused, laughing at himself for such a strange thought. He would find out once he confronted the symbol of peace. Crouching next to the girl, he traced her features as the rain poured down relentlessly. Her eyes remained wide in fear, and blood dripped from the wound. Deku leaned in, tasting the blood. It was sweet, like honey. Sighing, he stood up and left the girl lying on the street, indifferent to the possibility of hidden cameras or witnesses. He continued his search for more victims. Blending into the crowd was easy. Without the gas mask, he looked just like an ordinary civilian. A girl dressed in what seemed like a cosplay mumbled to herself about her boss. Deku seized the opportunity and approached her. "Hey, you seem distressed," he said, nervously scratching the back of his head. The girl turned to him. "Oh, yeah. It's just my boss, no biggie," she replied with a shrug, turning to leave when Deku grabbed her arm. "Ah, sorry," he quickly pulled back. "It's just that, you look like you could use a drink or two." He chuckled. trying to appear as uncomfortable as possible under her intense gaze. She sighed, checking her phone before looking back at him. Sure, I prefer a meal though, your treat. Before he could respond, she walked ahead, searching for a restaurant. Deku smiled. Everyone was just too oblivious to their surroundings. After sitting down in a small cafe, the girl ordered a croissant, and Deku ordered the same. Kid, I don't know why you're up so late, nor do I want to know. But your parents are going to be concerned. Go home immediately after this, okay? Deku slumped to the side, confused by her words. I could be older than you for all you know. What makes you think I'm a kid? The girl merely shrugged and took out her phone, scrolling through it. Bored, Deku pulled out his own phone, and the atmosphere became heavy and awkward. He smirked, shoving his phone in front of her face, showing her a picture of a duck. Quack! He exclaimed, gaining glances from a few other customers still awake. That's why you're a kid, she rolled her eyes, putting her phone away and staring into his eyes. Your order is here, miss, the waitress interrupted, bringing 2 drinks. The food will be served in a few moments. She bowed respectfully before returning to her counter. Anyways, I'll accompany you home later, okay? If you were found dead in an alleyway or something, I'd feel responsible, she said, somewhat annoyed. Deku smiled warmly at her. As if realizing something, he jolted upright. Izu, he said, reaching out to her. My name is Izu, what's yours? She looked surprised, as if she wasn't expecting kindness. Hesitantly, she reached out as well. Arise. Call me Rise. Deku smiled again. Rise. It's her appealing name. Rise gaped lightly, then tried her best to smile back. Thanks. Every instinct in her screamed for her to turn away, leave immediately as soon as her eyes landed on this kid. Run. Quack! The kid burst out, sounding just like an actual child. Maybe he was one despite what he said. Izu. My name is Izu, what's yours? Slowly, she felt the mask she wore in front of every stranger start to break away in the presence of this boy. It was as if he was a friend she had known for a long time, someone who understood what she was going through. A shoulder to lean on. Because this kid was just like her. Rise. It's her appealing name. With that, the stronghold she held fell. The boy had miraculously led her facade to crumble into dust. They spent their time together in peace, quietly enjoying their meal. As promised, the boy walked up to the cashier and paid for their food. She didn't question where he got the money. He was just a stranger after all, but one she felt safe with. However, when he suggested taking a shortcut through the alleys, alarm bells rang in her mind. But what could he seriously do? He was just a kid. Besides, kids nowadays wanted to be heroes. Nothing bad would happen, right? She tried to convince herself that the weird feeling in her gut was just anxiety for him, not herself. After all, this innocent-looking boy had made her feel safe. It would be fine, right? Her whole body shook violently as they entered the alleyway. It felt like she was trespassing into enemy territory, where at any moment, someone could jump out and harm her. The voice that had quieted began to bubble back to the surface. She felt suffocated as the air grew dense, a menacing aura emerging from nowhere. Run! Her fingers twitched uncontrollably, her whole body screamed for her to flee. But she stayed, watching as the boy turned around to face her. Run! She picked herself up, ready to escape. But just as she reached the exit of the alley, a hand grabbed her shoulder and pulled her back. She was slammed onto the concrete floor, eyes wide as she stared at the boy above her. I've heard about you, he whispered against her ear, his voice echoing in the eerily quiet alley. You're the daughter of XY Company, right? Your disguise won't work on me. He chuckled darkly, patting her head as his hands trailed down to her cheekbones. Heard from the underground you've been mistreated your entire life because you're the daughter of a CEO. Ain't that fun? I myself am a victim of bullying too. We truly have tons in common, right? The girl stammered through countless words she wanted to say, but the only thing that slipped out was, I. Surprise turned to fear, fear to sorrow, and sorrow to resignation. Surprise turned glassy. The world had given up on her, so why bother to fight anymore? Like this was all planned out, the green-haired boy smirked, getting to his feet. You want to die, don't you? I know those eyes, the eyes that have lost everything, the eyes that have given up. His tone was dark, darker than a night without stars. You're the same as me. He sighed dramatically as she remained still, refusing to move. The boy poked her. You want to die, right? Letting out a shaky breath, she opened her mouth. And me. I have no purpose in this world. The boy pet an eyebrow, genuinely confused by her statement, yet his eyes gleamed darkly, as if he expected something else. That's just boring. If you want to die so much, I'll just let you live. He turned away with a huff. What a waste of my time you are. Fed up with the insults she had endured all her life, she desperately screamed, Please! Just end me already. Deku wasn't planning on killing her. Really, he wasn't after discovering her identity. But there was a perfect idea he wanted to try. Swallowing his decline, he lifted her up and jumped onto a rooftop, gesturing to her. I was always the suicidal type when I was younger. He started, turning his attention back to the now apathetic girl. Now, what will you do? Like a puppet, she walked to the edge and looked down. She was afraid, yes, but in front of death, no one could be calm. The purpose of humans was to live, so when death loomed, she trembled. Still, she took a deep breath and prepared to leap. When a person takes a leap of faith, it's considered a heroic action, right? To face what they're afraid of. But what if you take a leap of faith when you're not even scared? Fear crossed her mind when she looked down, but when her eyes closed, her mind was clear. She could hear clear blue lakes, the soft winter wind blowing, trees swaying as birds chirped in accompaniment. Children ran around with huge smiles on their faces, carefree, where nothing worried her. Was that heaven? She didn't know, perhaps it was, perhaps it wasn't. No one knew, after all, our time was not up. So for the time being, those who died suffered while those who lived. Now, what will you do? Rise walked to the edge, falling freely from the roof, like a bird that had lost its way. Deku followed her to the edge, where Rise smiled up at the sky. Below, panicked citizens surrounded her, taking pictures and calling for help. Deku felt a presence behind him and turned to see Eraserhead, his expression tense. What do you think you're doing? Eraser's tone was demanding, not a question. Deku met his gaze, a hint of mischief in his eyes. Why, if it isn't my favorite Eraser hero, he said, clapping his hands together. I wonder what I'm doing? Maybe I'm just trying to get a girl to reconsider her choices? Before he could finish, Eraser launched an attack. Oh, seems like I caught you at the wrong time. Did you not get your daily dose of coffee? Deku retorted, pulling out his pocket knife and slashing through Eraser's binding weapon. Eraser grunted, narrowly missing Deku as he dodged with surprising agility. Even without his quirk, Deku was quick, and he knew that even with his abilities activated, it would lead to a hand-to-hand struggle. Determined not to let Eraser gain the upper hand, Deku rushed in, ready to strike. But Eraser kicked him in the gut, sending him stumbling back. Deku recognized the training behind Eraser's movements. He had become faster and harder to predict. Yet, Deku was not one to back down from a challenge. He tightened his grip on the knife and lunged again, barely grazing Eraser as he dodged at the last moment, cutting a chunk of hair in the process. They exchanged blows, each movement calculated and precise. Deku swung his knife, which Eraser caught with his binding weapon, never taking his eyes off Deku. In the heat of battle, Deku decided to break the rules. He stomped on Eraser's knee, causing him to falter. That was all Deku needed to stab his knife into Eraser's side, careful to avoid any vital organs. Consider it your lucky day, Eraserhead, Deku said darkly as Eraser struggled to look up. I was planning on taking down everyone in my way today, but this fight has opened new perspectives. He smiled, pulling the knife out as blood oozed from Eraser's wound. Deku laughed and leaped into the night sky, the sounds of sirens fading into the background. Eraser staggered to his feet, trying to steady himself. He needed medical attention quickly or risk losing too much blood. Unfortunately, the only person he could turn to was Present Mike, or Hizashi, as he preferred to call him. Sighing, he made his way to Hizashi's apartment, avoiding the crowded area below. He caught sight of a detective investigating the scene and made a mental note to speak with him after tending to his injuries. Sliding down a pipe, he landed in front of Hisashi's apartment and rang the bell. Almost immediately, a loud crash echoed from inside, followed by thuds and bangs. The door swung open to reveal Hisashi, looking disheveled in his pajamas. "Sho Yuta," he exclaimed, suddenly alert and stepping aside for Sho Yuta to enter. "Excuse the intrusion," Sho Yuta replied in his usual monotone as Hisashi quickly assessed his injuries. Without a word, Hisashi rushed to the bathroom, grabbing a first aid kit. He worked efficiently, applying pressure to the wound with clean gauze until the bleeding stopped, then cleaning it with disinfectants and cotton. As he stitched up the wound, he focused intently, ensuring each stitch was precise. Once finished, he packed up the supplies and shot Sho Yuta a sour look. "You realize this is my first time stitching someone else, right?" Sho Yuta simply nodded, reclining on the couch. "Don't wake me," he suggested, and soon, quiet snores filled the room as he relaxed. Hisashi sighed and looked away from his friend. "We've lost Shirakumo already, Sho Yuta. Did you know how close that stab was to your liver?" he asked rhetorically, not expecting an answer from the fast-asleep man. He groaned, pushing negative thoughts away as he put away the kit and turned off the lights before strolling back to his own room. "We don't need another dead friend." Sho Yuta groaned, opening his eyes as he tried to adjust to the lighting. He slowly sat up, remembering the wound he got from Deku. "Zashi coffee," he deadpanned. Hisashi emerged from the kitchen, holding 2 cups. "I still don't understand how you find that poison good. It can literally kill you in seconds," he exaggerated, his movements mirroring his speech as he handed Sho Yuta the cup of espresso he requested. Sho Yuta didn't reply. Instead, he reflected on the night's fight. The kid had been right in front of him, yet he couldn't even touch him. Those eyes that seemed to mimic the depths of an ocean, that voice echoing deep into the void. Deku's existence felt surreal, yet it was the only thing that proved he was alive. Hisashi noticed his friend had gone into a daze. "Sho Yuta," he said, gaining his attention. "Don't do this on your own again." Sho Yuta thought back to the expectations placed upon him. He had always been expected to achieve great things, destined to be a hero. Deku had been his best friend, but then Sho Yuta realized the potential of his quirk. He had worked hard to reach where he was, while Deku had only dreamed of being a hero, hoping for a miracle to grant him a quirk. It seemed impossible. How had Deku ended up with such a powerful quirk? "Kaken is always nice to me. Did nothing wrong." "Oh." Sho Yuta could still hear Deku's broken voice as he turned away, trying to reassure him with a smile that felt fractured. It was normal, right? For the weak to protect the strong. They were born to be shields, decoys for those who could rise. Yet, the thought made Sho Yuta feel sick. No, Deku wasn't pathetic, he was. He watched as Deku turned his back, sprinting into an endless void of darkness, and he felt helpless as he shrank smaller and smaller in the distance. He didn't chase after him. Katsuki jolted awake, reaching forward as if trying to grab onto someone from his dream. One moment his mind was filled with Deku's smile. The next, it was blurred out. He couldn't remember who stood in front of him or who he tried to hold on to, but he had a hunch. Sighing, he flopped back onto his bed. The final exams were approaching, yet here he was, thinking about a nerd. Unable to return to sleep, Katsuki got up and headed to the kitchen. It was only 5 in the morning, but he felt wide awake and grumpy. He started the stove, took out some eggs from the refrigerator, and began cooking katsudon for himself. By the time he finished, early risers Tenya, Shoto, and surprisingly, Denki, walked into the kitchen. "Oh, I was wondering what smelled so nice. It looks good. Can I have a bite?" Denki exclaimed, making his way toward Katsuki, trying to be quiet. "Kaminari. If you're hungry, then make something for yourself. Bakugo woke up to make this," Tenya said, standing next to Denki with his signature robotic arms. Shoto went straight to the refrigerator, taking out a bowl of soba. "Quiet down, extras," Katsuki grumbled as he scooped the cooked rice into a bowl, adding the toppings. "Bakugo, you're the one who's being loud," Tenya retorted while chopping nothing in particular. And I said shut up because you're annoying. Katsuki shot back, trying to contain his irritation. He grabbed the bowl of rice, ready to return to his room. And I still want a bite. Denki chimed in, oblivious to the tension. Katsuki growled, his body trembling with frustration. He slammed the bowl on the counter, not caring if it woke his classmates anymore. Here, just leave me alone, he stomped out, muttering curses under his breath. Tenya chose not to lecture him further. A loud crash echoed behind him as Katsuki left the kitchen. Turning back, Katsuki saw the bowl lying on the ground, its contents spilling everywhere. Clenching his fist, he quickly made his way to his room. Katsuki slammed the door shut and returned to his bed. He had spent nearly an hour making that bowl of katsudon, only for it to be ruined. It was almost funny, considering how his relationship with Deku felt like that bowl of katsudon. Katsuki felt shattered. That katsudon is just like us, he mumbled, closing his eyes and directing his thoughts away from Deku. No, it's not. Are you dumb? It was as if the gods didn't want to cooperate with him. A familiar voice rang out, and Katsuki hoped it was only his imagination. He heard the door to his balcony slide closed. Peeking through one eye, he saw a tuft of soft green hair. Deku! Katsuki started, pronouncing the name as if it were foreign. The greenette approached with his happy-go-lucky smile, strolling towards him carefully. Did you miss me? He asked, sounding carefree as if nothing mattered. What are you doing here? Katsuki stated, recalling how their last conversation had ended poorly, with Deku fleeing like a coward. Well, I suddenly realized that I haven't talked with you for a while, so I came to check up on you. Though, I'm a bit hurt that you left my favorite katsudon with some random guy who broke it, and you didn't even care about it. Now I'm rambling for God knows. Just ask the author why I'm even talking this random nonsense. Katsuki relaxed slightly as his childhood friend began to ramble, just like before. Deku choked, coughing as he tried to catch his breath. Phew, anyways. He looked up again, facing Katsuki. His eyes glinted under the shadows formed by his fringe. Leave. Katsuki froze. One moment, Deku was like a harmless bunny, and the next, he transformed into a predatory wolf. Deku's voice carried a venom that could paralyze anyone. It was obvious that the League had planned to attack again. When, Katsuki wasn't sure. Still, he needed confirmation. What do you mean? Deku returned his question with a bitter smile. All the answers Katsuki sought were written on his face like an open book. Still, Katsuki wanted an actual answer. He wanted to hear it from Deku's mouth. We will be attacking UA, Deku stated dryly, his face suddenly void of emotion. Katsuki shakily exhaled in a breath, trying to process the information. He shouldn't be surprised. He knew Deku was a villain. Yet, hearing it from his mouth was unexplainable. Enough, Deku. The greenette stared, urging Katsuki to continue. Enough, he tried, but his voice cracked, and he desperately swallowed the lump forming in his throat. Talking about emotions was not Katsuki's forte. He leaned more towards the tsundere side. He tried again. Enough. This time, his voice was steadier, more determined, more desperate. I'm taking you with me. I'm sure the principal will let you redeem yourself if you... Before he could finish, Deku abruptly cut him off. No. Excuse me, Katsuki started, but Deku continued, I said no. He looked away as if trying to hide something. But, Deku, Katsuki tried to reason with him, knowing it would be futile. The greenette wouldn't even look at him. I know, Deku interrupted again. You conveyed what you wanted to tell me that night. The room fell silent, with Katsuki waiting for Deku to finish, while Deku struggled to form a sentence. If I could turn back. I wouldn't, he began, his eyes darting around the room, still refusing to meet Katsuki's gaze. The League is like a family to me. They were the ones that wanted me. It's just that simple. After a few moments of silence, Deku opened his mouth, closed it, then reopened it again. That is why I will continue to commit crimes, even if I've given up on being a villain. Finally, Deku looked at Katsuki, but grimly, as if he didn't exist in this world at all. The boy standing in front of him was no longer the Izuku he knew. The one he used to call Zuken was gone.